The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, April 21st, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, it's Casual Friday. We will be looking back on the week that was with Heather Parton from Salon, or you may know her as Digby from the Uber blog Hullabaloo. Also on the program today, Supreme Court plans a Friday night dump on its mifepristone ruling. They have a self-imposed deadline by midnight. Also, McCarthy's draconian debt limit offer may not even have enough GOP votes in the House. This as corporate Democrats worry Biden has too much leverage. Donald Trump still besting DeSantis in the silent primary. North Carolina abortion rights are under peril as the Texas Senate passes a bill to post the 10 Commandments in every classroom in their state. House Republicans pass a bill banning trans women from sports. Tennessee Republican leader who voted to expel the Tennessee Three found to have sexually harassed interns. New report, Americans bought 60 million new guns during the pandemic. Ostensibly, a good guy with a gun meets a virus. Mike Pillow on the hook for $5 million. $5 million after it was determined by an arbitrator he lost the bet.
You hate when that happens, losing bets.
Hate when that happens. U.S. looking to evacuate the Sudanese embassy as a potential 75-hour temporary ceasefire floated. Finally, BuzzFeed News closes shop after 12 years, 11 years, and Twitter in chaos. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Casual Friday. Joining me is, does on almost every Friday, Emma Vigland. And
when
I join you. When
I feel like it.
I join you sometimes too on those same Fridays.
The benefits of me being the boss, I can just show up when I want.
It's nice. It is nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
you wouldn't know, but
we didn't even talk about this before the show. But I watched some of that Dave Landau. Is that his name? The guy
from Crowder.
Crowder's old sidekick.
Oh, that's what you sent. I hadn't checked it out yet.
Yes.
Okay.
And apparently he's left the show. But you guys, I'm a much nicer boss than Crowder.
That
Crowder
doesn't
turns
shock
out
me.
to be a really bad boss.
That doesn't shock me.
Really bad, very sensitive. Very sensitive, worried about competition. It's interesting. We've got to do a deep dive on this. I may even watch the video and do just a full stream on it.
Just do a reaction stream.
Honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I may do my first reaction stream to it because I quite enjoyed it. And he wasn't even telling stuff out of school. He was just doing the full on this is just boss stuff. He refused to sign the NDA. I mean, it's also really amazing when you hear the contract that he was offered, that Crowder was complaining about what he was offered from Daily Wire.
They really live in a completely different universe to us. The
Well,
idea that
but
that
but
kind
no,
of
no.
money.
My point being that the contract Crowder offered Dave Landau was so much more exploitive than the one that Crowder was offered, and for less money. I mean, it was amazing. But I didn't even mean to get into that, but I couldn't help it. Let's talk about this. The like we said, the mifepristone.
Mifepristone.
I've practiced this so many times.
It's a tough one.
Mifepristone ruling will come down tonight. That is, it's unclear whether there's going to be any type of like written decision. I would imagine not, although
Shadow docket.
Well, or it's possible that they. I mean, that's it. They can just sort of say like we're going to permanently stay the decision from the Fifth Circuit. It's unclear, particularly in like an emergency situation like this. But the implications of them overriding the assessment by the FDA is, in addition to the implications in terms of abortion access, the implications for the FDA, the EPA, the SEC. I mean, we can go on and on.
Yeah.
To do their jobs is just. So I suspect, I hope that the reason why there was a sort of an extension on the deadline was a function of them writing a decision to sort of like, make it clear that they don't have the ability to override an FDA. But who knows?
Well,
it could be the opposite.
It could. The Friday news dump element makes me feel like it could be the opposite. The fact that they would be that's usually when they want to put out news where they bury it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fact the right has wanted to undercut the administrative state for some time, and the fact that they're able to kind of do this. Well, first they did it with that West Virginia decision, right, with the EPA, and now this is another attack on it. It's on its face, of course, it's an attack on the abortion pill. But as you say, Sam, and the broader implications for courts being able to do whatever they want, override agencies' authority, that's even potentially scarier because of the precedent.
Meanwhile, if you have ever had any questions as to what is the genesis of the desire to control women's bodies relative to abortion, if you have ever had any questions as to what's the relationship between the patriarchy and the anti-LGBTQ impulse of the conservative movement, what is the relationship between abortion and sexuality as opposed to abortion and simply an innocent life? If you have ever had any of those questions, let this very brief clip from the judge, Matthew Kaczmarek, who made the initial ruling about mifepristone. This is him calling into a radio show in 2014. People are going to talk about this as one of the other things that he did not disclose. When you get a federal judgeship or when you're confirmed, you're supposed to disclose any conversations or writing that you have done publicly, anything publicly you have put out there relative to issues that may have legal import.
Yeah.
But put aside the fact that he didn't disclose this and he didn't disclose his law review writing and he hit it. This just gives you a sense of what is driving all of this. It is all about a religious fundamentalism and their worldview as to the role of men and women and what a family is or is not, according to them.
Yeah, and I just want to make very clear, people who experience the same-sex attraction are not responsible individually or solely for the atmosphere of the sexual revolution. You know, it's a long time coming. It came after no fault divorce. It came after we implemented very permissive policies on contraception. The sexual revolution has gone through several phases. We just happen to be at the phase now where same-sex marriage is at the fore.
It's a very brief passage, but understand what he's saying here. He's not blaming just gay people for these problems. And to be clear, he also does not believe that people can be gay.
Mm-hmm. He's not blaming them for being sick.
They experience same-sex attraction. In other words, they're not gay. They're just having a problem in which they cannot suppress their desires.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I'm not I'm just somebody who can't, suppress my desires, as opposed to being, I'm born gay, or I'm, born bi, I'm on, my sexuality is on a spectrum. He will not, that does not exist. It is just this somebody who is sinning. That's all. The idea that we're having these issues here. Play it one more time, because I want people to listen to this, that, and understand the idea of like permissive contraceptive use.
And no fault divorce. No fault divorce, meaning that women were able to leave marriages that were abusive, as opposed to, the hurdles that they would have to go through in the 50s and 60s to leave their marriages.
Indeed. You're good.
Yeah, and I just want to make very clear, people who experience the same-sex attraction are not responsible individually or solely for the atmosphere of the sexual revolution.
All right, pause it here. Now, okay, so he's saying it's not just, pause it here. Pause it here.
It came after
Sorry, one second.
We
pause it.
Implemented. Oh, yeah.
He's saying that people who experience same-sexual attraction, they're not solely responsible for the sexual revolution. What is the sexual revolution? What is the thing that happened in the sexual revolution? Women were emancipated. They were allowed to register to vote in their maiden name. They were allowed to have a credit card, even if they were married. They were allowed to say no legally under the law to their husbands as to when or whether they wanted to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
They were given an opportunity to earn at least close to, depending on your definition, to begin, let's say, the process of trying to earn equal amount in the workplace as to what men. It wasn't until 25 years after the sexual revolution in 1994 that there was government-sponsored research into women's health, specifically in their bodies. Not till 1994. And all of this, he's saying, you can't just blame gay people for this, although he doesn't believe in the existence of gay people. He goes on to say, it is permissive contraception. Go ahead, play the rest of this.
People who experience the same-sex attraction are not responsible individually or solely for the atmosphere of the sexual revolution. It's a long time coming. It came after no fault divorce. It came after we implemented very permissive policies on contraception. The sexual revolution has gone through several phases. We just happen to be at the phase now where same-sex marriage is at the fore.
So this was in response, obviously, to marriage equality, which, of course, he'll get around to.
Mm-hmm. But you see how they see all these things as connected.
Yep.
I mean that any deviation from the patriarchal structure. The sexual revolution, where he's talking about that there's, as you say, Sam, when women had more economic opportunity, were able to enter into the workforce, were able to have their own power in an imbalanced power relationship. That is what he is weeping about us not having anymore. A system in which women did not have the ability to have their own agency, and thus were more subject to, say, marital rape, to control, to men being able to do what they wanted, and women had to be at their beck and call. That's what they want to return to. And when there are more open conversations about gender and sexuality, it undercuts the very narrow confines that they want people to slot into. And so that's why they see these things as connected. And like the ruling that he handed down was just copy and pasted with conspiracy theories about mifepristone side effects that aren't based in reality. And the point is, like, I don't even know if that guy kind of believes that stuff, right?
No, I don't
because
think
it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
He's doing God's will, so
exactly.
Everything is justified in achieving that.
Yes, and to be clear too, listen to the way that he talks about permissive. He says we've been too permissive about contraceptive.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the we? Who's the we that gives permission to the who? Right? I mean, this is we as men, let's be clear, he's talking about white men, allowed women to have access to contraceptive too easily. Because it both reinforces his perspective on what the dynamic should be in society, and also laments the fact that we are not able to leverage our ability. I mean, all of this stuff is it's wrapped up in one thing. Because you start to see pregnancy not as a question of even sexuality, but of control. Because if we allow women, if we're too permissive with women in terms of their birth control, and part of that permissiveness also is, no consent and no fault divorce. Mm-hmm. And everything that came about in the so-called sexual revolution, like a husband can now legally be responsible for raping his wife. I mean, put this together, you start to realize, and when they say, like, you can't have sex without consequences, this is a method of control for these people. It is, I impregnate my wife. She has no legal right to question that, and she has no access to contraception, and that is that I control all of that.
Yeah, she's
and
a vessel for
me on that.
She's a vessel for my godly child, and that's how I'm going to control every aspect of that. That's why they don't come for condoms. That's why, I mean, because then the man has control over that. They come first for abortion, then for the abortion pill, then for the morning after pill, then for IUDs, then for every other kind of contraception that is in the woman's control, where she might be able to take a birth control pill and not have her husband know about it. That's the stuff that they come after first. That's not a coincidence. That is because this is a patriarchal power play from the start. Always has been. And again, like when we signed legislation in the Civil Rights Act, the right wing needed a new movement to galvanize around. And it, in part, was backlash against the sexual revolution and the liberation of women. And all of this stuff is a continuation of that historically. We're still living in it. Totally. So.
All right, we're going to talk to Digby in just a moment about some of these issues, at least in terms of the way that Ron DeSantis is wielding them. But first, a message from our sponsor, our favorite sponsor. This sale ends Sunday, April 23rd, Sunset Lake and Seder and the Majority Report teaming up in celebration of 420, the stoner holiday, as you know, into a fundraiser for the Last Prisoner Project. Last Prisoner Project is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to cannabis criminal justice reform. We still have people in prisons. We still have people who are having their kids taken away and their property confiscated because they have possession of marijuana. And, we live in a state where now, like, you can grow your own 6 plants in the backyard. It's incredibly unfair and effed up. It also has been used, a highly useful tool to launder racism to the extent that it laundered. So this is a great organization. And here's how it works. Everything on sunsetlakesebede.com will be 30% off with the coupon code 420. Orders over $150 will get a free jar of gummies of your choice. That means you can choose the one with melatonin for sleep. You can choose the sour gummy bears, which have CBD in them, or the good vibe gummies, which have both THC and CBD in them. Check it out. It is Sunset Lake's biggest sale of the year. That's why you're going to want to buy that much, where you get that free gummies. It ends on April 23rd. That's on Sunday. So do not miss it. Head over to sunsetlakesebede.com. Take advantage of this deal. Help raise money for the cannabis criminal justice reform. And couldn't be a better company. You've heard about me talk about them many times. Check it out. Some restrictions do apply. So check that out. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description. All right, quick break. And we're going to be talking to Digby. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. And, we forgot to play the music during the break. Let's just play do you have a quick hit of it?
Yeah.
Bradley's getting to it, yeah.
All right.
Are you ready for some pee-pee?
Meant to play this during the break to lead in. But here it is. All right, I'm ready. Heather, welcome back to the program. Always a pleasure to see you.
I was hoping to let it ride for a little bit more. That might be my favorite song that we have for one of our guests.
Really?
Yeah. It soothes me.
It does soothe you, doesn't it? It's a nice Friday morning kind of thing too, you know?
Yeah. Right.
I'm raring to go
Champing
here.
at
I want to
the
get
bit.
into
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
He's champing at the bit. Okay.
I mean, you and I have been talking about Fox News for 18, 19 years. I mean, we've been, certainly, it has been, I mean, Fox News was such a prominent factor in what I think, got me in this the business on some level. And it certainly was something that, in the run up to the Iraq War, they were, leading the charge in many respects in the 2000 election. They had a big role in that. Obviously Rush Limbaugh was really important, but Roger Ailes was such a malignant force on all of this. So there was, you wrote a piece in Salon, a little bit of a letdown in terms of, the resolution of the Dominion Fox lawsuit.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what I should say we were all, but most of us were looking forward to was the reports that would come out of the trial of the testimony. This is what we wanted to hear. You wanted to hear, unfortunately, it wasn't going to be televised. We can televise Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, but we can't televise, a trial like this, which is kind of ridiculous. Since this is, something of grave importance to our system and our democracy. But I think we were all looking forward to that. And we'd heard all this discovery. Had already been made public in the earlier motions that had come through, and we had already heard tapes and we'd read transcripts. But the truth was that we were going to hear about Rupert Murdoch being on the stand and Tucker Carlson being on the stand and being asked to explain how they could have, been such blazing hypocrites and greedmongers. That didn't happen. But I got to say that I think that probably it was going to be less exciting for us than we expected, simply because it wasn't going to be televised. And the big part of all of that is that we all know this about Fox. We already know what they are, I think. And the discovery documents and tapes that came out just reinforced everything that we knew, that basically it's all about money for them. It's just purely agreedly, it's a business, and that's all they care about is their stock prices. I think at the end of the day, the fact that Fox had to pay this much money out of their pocket was probably the best we were going to get out of this particular thing. And what this says to us, and I think it's really important for people to recognize this is a very poor way to try to save democracy.
Right. To
have one private company sue another private company for defamation, and be demanding money in return. I mean, that's about as lame a way to do this as we could expect. And I think we probably got the best out of it that we could expect. So, yeah, it was a disappointment. I think we all wanted more from it, but it is what it is. And I think it was never going to be what we wished it would be.
Were you surprised at the number? I thought it was a little low, given, it's less than what Alex Jones and InfoWars are going to have to pay in total, and what the damages that for the Sandy Hook lie. And of course, I think the nature of the lies there were so egregious and disgusting that that's maybe what made that judgment larger. But in terms of larger ramifications for, say, our democracy, I would argue that the lies about the election are more consequential in the macro. So I was a little surprised at the figure.
Well, I don't know about these things. I don't work in that, in that area. But what I have heard was that the calculation that went into that and why people are going, wow, that's a real eye-popping number, even though compared to Alex Jones, it's not nearly as much, is because it was a settlement.
Right.
The verdict in a jury trial, that's probably not going to hold up. And I think that was the calculation that the lawyers were going to make, which is what is the actual check that's going to be written here. And this 100%. Amount was huge. So they decided that this was their best move, which, I don't even blame Dominion for this. I mean, look, they are a business. That is what they were, right. They made, this is what they were doing it for. And I think they did reestablish the idea. I think they managed to get the idea out in the public, and hopefully, in the voting machine community, whatever that is, that they are a reliable company and that this was all a bunch of lies. I mean, I think they succeeded in their, in their goal, but it is what it is. It's a private company trying to, save its brand. I mean, I guess that's America, I guess that's the best we can, that's what we do now. We save our brands. So.
There's two things. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a settlement as opposed to an award, and, Alex Jones can try and hide that money. There could be, some type of appeal that reduces the amount that he gets, that it's going to involve a lot more legal work to get that money. This is just simply a deal. We stop the suit. You pay us the money. You don't pay us the money, then you're in contempt of court, and they can't afford to do that. Although they already have. I mean, we have a special master looking over discovery, and this is important too because they have another lawsuit. There's a multiple other lawsuits, like individuals like that. Grossberg, the producer, is suing Fox, and there's other individual suits, but. Smartmatic has a suit where they're seeking actually closer to like 2.5 or 2, I think it's $2.7 billion. They just put in a motion that was filed in New York State because their court is going to be their trial is going to be in New York State. And I guess it gets transmitted to the Delaware State Court for all of the discovery to be preserved. Now, I saw an interview, I think it was with the Dominion lawyer who said, most of the stuff has come out that we had in terms of discovery. I am skeptical about that. And there's been some reports that there is more. It's quite possible that he doesn't want to, who knows what Dominion signed as part of that agreement. I mean, it's certainly within their purview to, say, we're going to sign a non-disclosure and we're not going to, and part of that non-disclosure is to say that we haven't signed a non-disclosure or that we're not going to go out and talk about this stuff. I mean, we just don't know. So Smartmatic, and supposedly this case will not be tried for another year or two. I'm not quite clear on that. There's a hearing over the next week. I think it is. But it puts pressure on Fox. And, the big name of the game for Fox is also clearance and carriage fees. And it'll be interesting to see how that works out in terms of carriage fees. We probably won't know the answer until they're filing, their shareholder filing at the end of the year, how those negotiations go. But I wonder if it undercuts those negotiations. I mean, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is you want to disempower Fox's ability to disseminate what they're disseminating. We saw, multiple examples this week of just like sort of almost like arguably non-political, but more like societal dangers that Fox represents. You had this guy, multiple people who were shooting at kids, shooting at strangers. And a lot of that is driven by if not Fox specifically, although part of it, that right-wing echo chamber that Fox is such a major component about keeping alive and maintaining.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I honestly don't. I mean, look at the mass shootings where it's obvious that the people who leave these manifestos or who leave a long trail of social media, how many of them are influenced by this propaganda that comes out of Fox News and the other right-wing, parts of the fever swamp out there. Of course, this is huge. And the idea of disempowering them, I mean, I think, we think money, they are completely motivated by greed. I mean, that's one thing that this thing really did establish. I wrote a piece about this a few weeks ago when this discovery came out. And we heard people like Rupert Murdoch going, there is no red and blue, there's only green. And you hear Tucker Carlson going, my God, you've got to stop her from saying that. Look at the stock price. I mean, there's no doubt what motivates them here. And it's less ideology than I think I thought. I mean, I felt like that was one of the revelations in this is that, yes, there is ideology at the bottom of this. And that's maybe that's in the big picture greed, right? Keep taxes low for rich people and, deregulate the whole world. That's part of their mission. But really and truly, this is just a very, very greed driven organization. And they are absolutely petrified that they're going to lose their market share to some of these competitors, that these small fry like OAN and Newsmax, which could happen. And, and they're watching things too, like, you're talking about carriage fees. They're watching all this cord cutting and people, getting out of the cable business. I mean, there's a big threat to their very, to their very being here. And they're clinging to these people and they've trained their audience to be, they've trained them to be, to only want to hear what they want to hear. I mean, this is something that they have been, and it's not just them, it's talk radio that trained them into that as well. As you well know, Sam, from years in radio, what that was like. I mean, this was just a bombardment of disinformation and indoctrination into this way of thinking. And these people, their audience proved after January 6th, they just won't hear what they don't want to hear. They're just not willing to do it. They're just not going to do it. And so they are in a real bind here. And so the way to disempower them is through, maybe it's through these multiple different, approaches. One of them being shareholder lawsuits, which I think is going to be one of the big problems they're facing. Because they're negligent, right? They just signed a $787.5 million check because because Donald Trump said something, and they're following the lead of some nut like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani. That cost that company $787 million. And if you are a shareholder, you have a legitimate reason to sue them for this. So that's going to be a whole other avenue. So I think they're damaged. I do think they're damaged. I just don't see any evidence that they're going to change anything.
No, I agree with you.
On the basis of saying, gee, we better really clean up our act. I mean, I see no evidence that they have any intention of doing that.
No, I agree with you. And to be clear on that, on that point about the incompetence, if you're a shareholder in a news company, your presumption is that there is a basic level of competence to be able to deliver the news and figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't hurt their ratings that much. That they're willing to spend $780 million worth of lies. The other point you made about talk radio, people should just remember this as well. Ailes fashioned this on talk radio, on Fox, fashioned Fox on talk radio. I mean, many of the early hosts, like guys like Hannity and O'Reilly, they were radio hosts. Riley actually got in a little bit later, but there was plenty of radio hosts, and certainly that was the sort of like the
format
template.
Was definitely
and people should also understand this. The thing that the right understood, and we understood when we launched Air America as well, because it was pretty obvious by that point, the value of having a hermetically sealed sort of like a voice that was not too disparate over the course of the day was crucial in making these things profitable. Like Rush Limbaugh's success was solidified when stations started to realize, like, oh, we're not a talk station. We're a right-wing talk station. And so that the persons before Limbaugh and the persons after Limbaugh, they've got to be more or less on the same page, because we want people to be able to like stay comfortable here and get into, and that dynamic of format purity essentially was, I think, a real inspiration for the way that Roger Ailes set up Fox News, which is we need to do all of this, because you look at the early like MSNBC and it was all over the place at any given point. Yeah. But Fox News, you could be sure that what you got in the morning was what you were going to get in the evening every single time. And that resonated a lot more with the right, and frankly resonated more than it did with the left. I mean, people, on Air America would appreciate the fact that maybe, one person had different ideas about this than another person, and that there was some measure of diverse ideological, but with Fox, it was all the talking points. Mm-hmm. You could do it once at the beginning of the day and everybody would sign on to those essentially. And that dynamic still exists. I mean, supposedly, there's a little more reporting that goes on in the day. I don't quite buy that, but that's what we're sold. Let's turn, with that said, I don't know that we're going to get much more on the Fox News, defamation side for a while. But we're going to hear a lot more about the debt ceiling over the next 7 weeks, I guess it is. I think it is it June 30th? I think they're talking about as the drop dead day, or maybe that's it may be somewhere around there.
Something like that.
For the debt ceiling. You had Kevin McCarthy finally introduce the legislation that he wants. He introduced it at Wall Street as a way of like calming their nerves, I guess, and saying like, I see you, don't worry.
A little on the nose.
It is very draconian, even for the Republicans. And it is not even clear that he can pass it with his own people, because you got so-called frontline Republicans who are like, I don't know if I can ask my communities to give back money that they had been working with for coronavirus relief, or cut back on food for kids. That seems a little much. What's your sense of what's happening with this on that side of the equation?
I mean, it's typically, it's typical for these Republicans when they do this kind of debt ceiling, hostage taking. This is what we end up seeing every time. I mean, there's nothing new about it. What they are ending up, seemingly at this point, you do have those frontline Republicans. They're all kind of saying, gosh, as you say, taking a lot of my people kind of need that food. So this is sort of a problem. It's going to make me look bad. And then you've got the right wingers. You've got the Marjorie Taylor Greene faction over there going, well, this doesn't go far enough. I mean, why aren't we putting children in prison? That's what I ran on. What are you talking about? I mean, there's just there is no limit to what they want. So, then we all knew that McCarthy was going to be in this position with this very narrow majority that he has and this wingnut faction that's out of their minds. So, I frankly am enjoying watching him squirm. I mean, this is one of my favorite things, is to watch Kevin McCarthy squirm. And he is. I mean, it was too on the nose that he went up to Wall Street. I mean, I couldn't believe he did it, to be honest. I'm just going, are you kidding me? I mean, you're not even trying, I mean, you're just so blatant here. Let me soothe the big money boys here today. And then tomorrow I'll deal with the Marjorie Taylor Greene over here. But what's the end game here? I mean, the end game is that, they're going to end up with a deal that probably, I'm going to guess it's going to pass the House narrowly, because I think these frontline Republicans are a bunch of weasels, and I think they'll probably end up voting for it. And then I think we'll end up going to the Senate, and the whole thing they'll start over again. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And when the Senate and the White House come to an agreement, it'll go back to the House, and that's where the real battle will be. And I just have a sneaking suspicion that it's, I mean, I just think that at that point is when the frontline Republicans are going to have to face the music.
Yep.
And at that point, that is when we're going to see the real battle. And he has a very narrow majority. So it's not going to take much, if Jeffries and the rest of them have any, I mean, this is the New York delegation that's going to make a difference, It's going to be New Yorkers.
Right. The Republicans have won that.
They're the people who will do it. Yeah.
But the amazing thing is this. I mean, this is where you start to see like how bad at this Kevin McCarthy is. Because there is a broad sense of like, we're going through this, but this is a bluff. Mm-hmm. And part of the tip-off that it's a bluff is not just, he didn't just go to Wall Street to sort of say like, I'm in your corner because I'm cutting stuff from poor people. He's going there saying like, don't worry. Like the stock market is the ones that really afraid of the default. Mm-hmm. And he's going there and saying, don't worry. And the problem is we all see that. And so if he's going to assuage the fears of Wall Street, that he's not going to crash the debt ceiling, then we know. And really the reason why we hear, Mace, like you say, and or any of the New York delegation complaining about this bill that is out there, is because they are already in mitigation mode, because they know they're going to have to vote for this bill so that it gets to the Senate, and then they know they're also going to have to vote for the bill that comes out of the Senate that will keep the debt ceiling from being crashed, and they know that the people running against them are going to use the first vote against them in the 2024 election. And that's what they're bummed about. What's really interesting is we're watching the Democrats, some of the Democrats, and it's interesting the way that these stories have been phrased. Like I saw this, like that there's reports that the Democrats, and I see it as the Democrats, mm-hmm. Like House Democrats call on Biden to meet with McCarthy on debt limit. I think I saw one in Axios that was like Democrats worry about Biden what Biden's plans in the debt ceiling. And I was like, oh God, is he caving now? And no,
No.
It is actually conservative Democrats, like the mansions, the cinemas, in the House. There's a bunch there who are concerned that Biden is just not taking the bait. And he's just saying, like, you guys are lunatics and I'm not going to negotiate with you. And I sincerely like turned to that, click that link button thinking like, oh, is he caving on this now?
And here we go. Yeah.
But no, it appears, at least at this juncture, I have no doubt that he can cave at the last minute. But it appears that he is basically just not taking the bait. And he knows they're gonna come around on this. And so he's just like, I'll negotiate when you pass a bill. But so that we can really, we're not having a hypothetical conversation. We're saying like your hostage taking is this, and we're just going to pass a bill. And it's fun to watch Manchin sweat. Part of the reason why he complains is obviously because that's part of his campaign, and which is incidentally, we should say, not going very well. He's not raising very much money apparently, but I'm sure he'll get it from the no labels crowd. But
no, it isn't. And I mean, I think that now you're just, this is, it's really kabuki now. I mean, it's really kabuki. I mean, because we just laid out what the plan is here and what's going to happen and, how this whole thing will come about. Now, granted, there may be a last minute problem when they get the full bill back to the House after the Senate passes it and the White House signs off on it. But, we know how this is going to go. And they could decide to crash the economy. I mean, I don't doubt that some of these Republicans will, absolutely say, no, we're not going to vote for this. I have no doubt that they don't understand how anything works, including the economy. So that doesn't surprise me. But we are watching this whole thing play out. And one of the things I think that's been really smart, just to give Biden a little credit, is that instead of addressing any of the issues that McCarthy came up with in this cockamamie plan, he just said, this is a bunch of wacky stuff. He called it wacky. And I think that's very effective, to just call it wacky. Don't go in on the specifics, and don't start talking about, any kind of negotiating point around there. Just, it's wacky. We're not dealing with that. Just, good luck, Kev, good luck, that you see what you can do.
Yeah.
So
right.
I thought that was good.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, we're just dealing with this thing, this insanity of, having to go through this ridiculous process. And I don't know, we can just go back in time a little bit. The idea that the Democrats were unable to get the votes they needed, that they couldn't find a way creatively to get the votes they needed to pass an extension of the debt ceiling through 2024 or something, or, whatever they could have done to avoid this moment, is really a shame. And I don't know specifically what happened. I'm sure it was Manchin and Sinema who were saying they would refuse to allow them to, I guess it was they had to do it through reconciliation, and that Manchin and Sinema were unwilling to do that because they had a spare reconciliation. Remember, they had an extra that they could have used for, to try and wrap this in, at least try to do it. And they said that they couldn't. So here we are. It's just a big waste of time. On the other hand, with the House in the hands of the Republicans, nothing good's going to get done anyway.
Right.
So, all right, let's just, let's play games.
Well, that's what's funny about hearing Manchin complain about the way that Biden's handling this. Is because there's a reason why they like this debt ceiling thing, because it allows him to have to come in and be, reasonable and negotiate and actually achieve some of his agenda without having to own it. Manchin's agenda in this instance. And because Biden isn't sort of like following the script that has been followed in the past with these sort of like self-made crises, he's getting a little, pissy about it.
He is. But you know what? His polling, it's not just that he's not collecting any money. I mean, he's independently wealthy. He can afford to finance his own campaign if that's what he wants. His polling is terrible. And I read a piece this week that I thought was so interesting because, John Tester in Montana, who's facing similar headwinds, one would assume, in a red state at a time of extreme polarization, blah, blah, blah. Tester's doing great. He's still got a majority. And by the way, John Tester has not been making huge moves out there to show his independence or to be he's voted with the conservative group from time to time. And, it probably more so in the next couple of years or whatever, as we're going through this. But nonetheless, he did not go out of his way to show just how conservative he is. He voted with the party on all the big line items that they had in the first 2 years. He didn't make a big show of it. And I think there's a lesson in this. Both Sinema and Manchin are dead in the water in the polls. They may both of them may lose their seats. Hopefully Sinema will at least lose it to another Democrat. But Manchin, and if they put in Jim Justice, who's the current governor and his term limiting out, very popular Republican guy, used to be a Democrat, he'll win. I mean, he's way more popular. The problem is that when you try to do this stuff, Manchin and Sinema, and try to do this sort of middle ground, they're operating in a politics that doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
That is not how it works. And they have made, there's nobody who likes them. In West Virginia, the Democrats can't stand Manchin because of what he did. And the Republicans figure, hey, we can get a real Republican in there. We can get Jim Justice in there. What do I need that guy for? And I think it's offensive to people to see all the showboating and the kind of hemming and the hawing. That's just not how things are working these days for most voters. This idea that, you can position yourself as the voice of God above both parties, where I'm the bipartisan person. I know more. I know better than everybody else. I don't think it's working. And I think for both of those people are going to lose their seats over what they did. And Manchin's going to make a big, he's going to be a mess over the next couple of years. Luckily for us, like he hasn't already been, right?
Right.
But luckily for us that there isn't the agenda.
The agenda's stalled anyways. And the real issue is the real issue is going to be things like, he's like the type of guy who's going to come out and vote against the Labor nominee.
Right.
He's going to, and we should say, she legally also can stay acting Labor secretary really for years to come.
And they approved her as deputy Labor secretary 2 years ago, and 50 to 47, and now she's too extreme to be Labor secretary. It's ridiculous.
But that's where Manchin gets to show his, his bona fides there. While we're here talking about the Senate, where are we on getting Dianne Feinstein to resign? I feel like we're about a year or two late on it. But what about going forward? Because the one thing that matters, obviously getting executives confirmed is important too. But the one thing that matters is getting federal judges on the bench, and Dianne Feinstein or whomever. Does anybody have a sense of like who's answering the phone when somebody calls, or who's typing into her phone when somebody wants a message? Like, does anybody know who's in charge in that office at this point?
Well, I've heard, and I read something just in passing that somebody was blaming. This was sort of an insider anonymously saying that this is the chief of staff's job security. I don't know if they were saying maybe that, Feinstein herself is so out of it now that she's not even making these decisions. And that basically this is the staff that is making the decision to stay on, which I think is a fairly reasonable theory, but it doesn't explain why the party, even people like, Chris Murphy or, people like that you don't expect them to kind of jump. I mean, okay, there's the whole thing, this is sexist to say she has to leave and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. But a lot of them are saying this stuff, not just the sexism, but saying, well, it's up to her. It's her choice. No one can force her out. That's wrong. I have a feeling, and I mean, I guess maybe I'm wrong here, but it's the only thing that makes any sense to me, is that somebody has said to them, if you don't say that she needs to go, then we can get, maybe we can ease her out. But she's stubborn. Right. And if you say that you want her to go, she's going to dig in her heels and there's nothing we can do. I mean, that's what I'm assuming is she happening.
Even aware of it, though? I mean,
I don't know. I mean,
but we don't know. But here's my theory that I think needs to be getting a little bit like more runway here, is that this is all not the primary battle. This is a battle for the Senate seat and for who the replacement is going to be.
Yes, that's a factor for sure.
I mean, Newsom got a lot of flack for putting his buddy in when Kamala Harris became VP. Alex Padilla, they've been friends for a long time, is my understanding. When he had said previously that he was going to put a black woman in that position. Now there is a black woman who has entered the race, 3-person race for Dianne Feinstein's seat. We have Adam Schiff, we have Katie Porter, and we have Barbara Lee, who has been a good soldier. She's been progressive, but also working within the California Democratic Party for her entire career. I think partly she's throwing her hat in the ring now. So she's like, hey, Newsom, appoint me to this position while Feinstein resigns. And so I think there's a lot of people behind the scenes in the Katie Porter camp or in the Adam Schiff camp who aren't going to be vocal about having Feinstein resign, because that might give Barbara Lee a leg up once the race happens in 2024 in earnest.
Well, I mean, you may very well be true. I mean, I know for a fact that there is a lot of positioning and a lot of hand-wringing in California about what Newsom is going to do. And I doubt that he wants to be in this position of having to do this. He didn't want to have to take a position on say, look, let the games begin, let everybody, go ahead, let the voters decide. I mean, and then there's to talk about him putting in a caretaker position. Now there, and this is a problem too, I think, for California voters. A lot of people, I mean, I know a lot of progressives, love Barbara Lee and they would like to see her in there. On the other hand, Barbara Lee is like 77 years old.
Right. And
there are many people who believe that maybe, it's time to give somebody at least a little bit younger a chance to, for that seat. And there are plenty of people waiting in the wings, not just Porter and Schiff. California is full. You can imagine. People have been waiting for Feinstein for decades to retire. And, there's a lot of people waiting their turn. So, I mean, there could be many more people joining the primary and trying, to take this seat. So, I don't know. What I do know is that, what we're pointing up here is a super, super problem. It's one thing when you got a big majority and you got a couple of old duffers who barely show up to work, or like Strom Thurmond used to walk around in his pajamas in the Capitol. I mean, there's a long history of ancient mariners, clinging to power for way too long. But this is a very closely divided country, and the Senate is a very closely divided institution, and we just can't afford it. I mean, the country can't afford it, the party can't afford it, and Feinstein should never have run the last time she ran. I was, appalled that she actually did it. It was clear she was been slipping for a while. It's not like this is anything new. And she was just too old, which is one of the reservations that people are having with Barbara, who I love and would vote for gladly anytime. But people wonder about that. Maybe this is a mistake. Maybe you need somebody younger, like Porter or even Schiff, who's, he's no spring chicken, but he's not as old as that, But, the people are wondering about that. So, I don't know what to tell you. It's a mess. And all I can say is hopefully somewhere, someone is working on her.
It's
to get her to go, unless they're just waiting for her to keel over. I mean, and that's possible too.
It's so frustrating that's exactly the words I think we used at the beginning of the week. Somewhere, somebody's doing something. Like it's so frustrating not even being able to have a sense of what's going on. Like who's driving that bus? Because I am finding it increasingly hard to believe that she has, a genuine awareness of what's going on. I mean, just based upon the way that she reacted to the statement that she was not running again, where she was asked by reporters, well, what's your comment on not running? I am running.
I am running. What are you talking about?
What am I doing? That type of thing. And it's
obvious. I mean, there's no question, obviously. I mean, it's a sad thing, but look, the woman is, what is she, 88?
She's 89. No, yeah, it is a sad thing.
It's sad, but I mean, 89 is a good, long, healthy life. She's had a wonderful career. She's left a great legacy. She did some good things. She did, she did some great stuff on guns. She did some good stuff on torture. I mean, the woman has not been without successes, although she's been a miserable, in my view, miserable obstruction in many ways. But I mean, she's not without a legacy that she can walk away from and be proud of. And the idea that somehow or another it's wrong to push her out is absurd. It is. And if it is that her staff is in charge and they're the obstructive piece of this, which I think is a true possibility, then that's a problem with the Democratic Party, because if they can't control staff, it's one thing as, a senile senator, you can't get, you got to tread carefully. A staffer?
Schumer should have been on this.
No kidding.
Ages ago.
No kidding. I mean, this is the kind of thing where,
himself,
you should be working on that.
He perceives himself as a concierge, and if she didn't order resignation, then he won't do it. Oh, no, she... all right, let's just briefly, since we touched on, let's touch on this. You wrote a piece about DeSantis. There is this sort of silent primary going on that's not so silent on the Republican side. It appears, I mean, there's still a couple of billionaires who've come out and said, I'm still supporting DeSantis. But it's hard to sort of see the path for DeSantis, like where it could happen here. And he may be thinking like it's worth being in the race because actuarially speaking, maybe there's a chance that Trump doesn't make it. I think there's a legitimate argument.
I think that's the plan.
And and maybe if he sort of avoids attacking Trump too much, then, any damage Trump does to him won't be sustaining over the next 4 years. I don't know. It's very hard to explain what DeSantis' strategy is, other than to promote reports that he's an extremely unlikable guy. I mean, that's, like when you're reading in Politico that they're getting emails from former Republican congresspeople who say like, I will say this, very adept at picking out what issues are going to excite the base, but just on a personable level, just a horrible guy. And, apparently this is also the endorsement story. The reason why DeSantis is losing all these endorsements to Trump is in part because Trump calls them and asks for the endorsement, and DeSantis has his intern do it.
He's a jackass. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, this guy has got the personality of a doorknob. He's just a jackass, and nobody can stand him. And the only reason that he's in this is because he won in Florida big, because the Democratic Party there is dead. And so,
to be clear, I mean, he won big, but no bigger than Marco Rubio, really. Right. I mean, and Marco Rubio was also, I mean, it is a function of it's like the Harlem Globetrotters going around saying like, we win big every time we play the Washington Generals.
Well, but Gillum didn't run a terrible campaign either. It was just like everything came out about him afterwards, right? After he lost. And then it seemed like the Democratic Party abandoned the state largely. If New York wasn't such a disaster in the way that the Democratic Party dealt with the last midterms, the Florida Democratic Party would be in #1 in power rankings of state parties dropping the ball. Yeah.
Absolutely. They're the worst. And they've been getting worse and worse and worse. And by the way, I don't see much hope of them getting better. They just put the losing candidate in the governor's race in charge of the Democratic Party down there, who's now the head of the Florida Democratic Party, Nikki Fried. So that DeSantis they see him, he's presenting himself as, well, I'm a winner, I can win. And we won big in Florida, and Florida's great. And he's making a lot of news because he's just, putting forth tremendously horrific policies that are, totally catering to the red meat base. But his strategy for running for president is bizarre, I think. And I think most people are beginning to see how ridiculous that is. He's going for the MAGA base, which would be fine if Trump weren't running, but he is, and Trump is the MAGA base. I mean, that there's no way that he's going to be able to compete with the real guy, with the guy who is there. And Trump is showing that he still has a tremendous amount of clout in the party and in the party institution, as much as with the base. I mean, that's very valuable. And DeSantis just doesn't have that. Honestly, the smart move for anyone in 2024 would have been to just take a pass. And we're seeing more and more people do that because Trump, as long as Trump is out there, I mean, sure, if he drops dead on the golf course, DeSantis will be the guy. But I mean, Trump's father, who also had dementia, lived to be something like 95 years old. I mean, there's no reason to believe that Trump is going to die anytime soon. He's not sick. He's just, I mean, at least not physically. And I just that seems to be the
syphilis is going to take
a
lot longer to take out my body than it did my brain. I just want to say that.
So DeSantis, I mean, and what he is exposing is, and I think, I mean, I wrote a piece about this today for Salon, which is that, this new Republican Party, which basically, they're sort of saying, well, they've got a whole bunch of, they're going in a new direction and the old establishment is dead, Well, that's true. We've known that for a long time. I mean, anybody who isn't on board with Trump has been either drummed out of the party or marginalized to the point where they're irrelevant. And the new generation that we're seeing coming up in the States is terrifying. I mean, look at Tennessee. I mean, that's the Republican Party of the next generation that we're going to be seeing. So we already knew that. But what's interesting about it is they did some polling. I think it was Echelon that did some polling to sort of back up this idea that, the MAGAs and the whatever else people call themselves in the party, the party firsters is what they did. So people who say a Republican first or are you a Donald Trump first? It's actually about 38% that say they're Donald Trump first, which is shocking. I mean, that's a big group of people. Tens of millions of people say I'm more for him than I am for the party, which should tell anyone who's thinking of running for president that they need to take a pass, that until Trump's gone, that he's going to own the party. But they also, these party firsters and the MAGA people, they sort of broke it down on what the differences are between them. And it's quite interesting because there really isn't much difference at all. It's really surprising. The one thing, foreign policy, there is a difference. You've got the isolationist, America firsters are under the Trump banner, and the party firsters are more America needs to have a strong presence in the world thing. Okay, that's not surprising. And they are different on business. The party firsters say that business, this whole thing that DeSantis is doing about woke capitalism, they're not buying it. A fairly large number of Republicans, they've still got muscle memory about business being free to do whatever they want, which in the case of standing up for your gay employees or, being free to sort of operate your business without without having to lick, Ron DeSantis's boots. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing when you're looking at what's happening in places like Arkansas, where the state is is passing laws that they can now hire child laborers again. I mean, this is the freedom of business has I'm just putting that out there because, I hope liberals don't get the idea somehow that because Ron DeSantis is doing this and that Disney is being the good guys here, that it always works that way. Because most of the time it's the other way around.
Right.
And you want the state to be able to have the power to do something about businesses that are doing horrible things. So just to put that out there. But what they agree on, immigration and all this culture war nonsense, They are on board with all of it, and they're on board with the new version. They asked him about whether or not they care mostly about religious liberty and abortion, or whether they care about racial teaching about racism, CRT, and all this transgender stuff. And the whole party firsters and MAGA people, they're all on this transgender and the CRT thing. So the culture war is what binds the party together. And that is where DeSantis is making his move. And if you listen to Trump these days, you can't believe the garbage that he's coming out on the culture war. I don't think most people are hearing this because he's putting out these policy videos. If you don't see them, which most people, this is just going into the fever swamp, right? The only people who are hearing this stuff are the Trumpers. It's horrifying. I mean, this stuff he wants to put homeless people in concentration camps, and I'm not kidding.
And bomb Mexico, and
Mexico.
Transition care ban on a federal level. I just want to wrap or connect some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier about the lack of leverage that Kevin McCarthy and even Joe Manchin have in this instance. Like, this is what the Republican Party is coalescing behind. DeSantis hasn't officially run. It already looks DOA at this point. He's flamed out. He's throwing every trick in his bag out in a last-ditch effort. Trump still has a stranglehold on the party. The only thing they seem to care about is trans people, 1% of the population, and demonizing them, which regular people are like, I'm just trying to get through my day. Trump is so wildly unpopular in the midst of all these legal battles. He's the front runner for the nomination, and no moderate or independent voter says, oh, those indictments, that makes me more likely to vote for him. It only works for his base. The Republicans, I haven't seen them in such disarray with an election coming up, with a president who is anodyne at best, but also has pretty low approval ratings. On its face, should be a beatable person to at least make some gains on. In an election cycle coming up, they are completely in disarray. They have nothing to coalesce behind, and they have no leverage on this debt ceiling thing because no one wants to crash the economy over work requirements for SNAP and clawing back IRS funding. Like, you guys both have been doing this for a while. Have you ever seen them in this kind of situation before?
Never.
I think it is sort of fascinating. Because look, it was clear from the Republican platform in 2020.
Yeah.
They're just running on Trump's personality, and the point that DeSantis, is really just like those two issues that you were talking about that are different between those sort of two categories of Republicans. We should say the number of people in this country that vote on foreign policy is like hovering around like none. And I mean, that's just the case, particularly on the Republican side. I think it's certainly possible that within the Democratic Party, there is a more distinct sort of like, anti-war sentiment. But then on the Republican side, the isolationism is sort of like a hard, we're going to do this, but only when it's in, it's a harder sort of like pitch to sell. And it's certainly, but the business.
I've always believed that for a lot of Republicans, when Trump says America first, a lot of them see that as being the strongest country on the planet. I don't think that they see a difference there. I think they're able to sort of, absorb both of those messages at the same time.
Right. I just don't think it's that distinct. And that's why, I think there's an awareness on the Republican side that they have this problem. That's why there is like this, more focus on minoritarian rule. But it is interesting on the Democratic side. Joe Biden reportedly may announce as early as next week that he's running. There is he's got high approval amongst Democrats, although there's also a significant I don't know if it's half, but pretty close, would rather somebody else run. I certainly would like to see a strong progressive in the primary, just at the least, because we saw the value of having a strong Bernie Sanders and relatively strong Elizabeth Warren in the, or at least however the Biden administration calculated, in terms of them both being able to staff their respective sort of like wheelhouses in the administration. There's a ton of like Warrenites, if you will, in the DOJ and antitrust. There's a ton, maybe not quite as much as I would like, of labor that, Sanders had significant sway in the labor department and sort of around that whole silo, I guess, if you will. I would like to see a strong progressive come out to do it, but I don't, Marianne Williamson has some, proposals that I like a lot. I just don't know that she's someone who's going to have that kind of influence in a race that is going to sort of, impact Biden. And I saw Bobby Kennedy's speech the other day, and Digby, I'm quite convinced we must have had you on Ring of Fire when I would do the radio show with Bobby Kennedy along with Mike Papantonio. I watched his speech. There's a lot of stuff that Bobby talks about that I just love. There's a lot of stuff, he didn't quite talk about all of it in his speech, that I really don't love. And it just made me, it made me depressed on some level, that like, where is the progressive voice out there that is not going to be talking about, that is not hung up on this, like, sort of obsession with vaccinations. I disagree with his assessment about lockdowns that he talked about in his speech. I don't think they were as prolonged as he sort of like implies that they were. But, people in New York, it's one thing to be in Malibu and, look out on the ocean and think like, why are we having a lockdown? It's another to be walking in New York and seeing refrigerated morgues and saying, how is it that we could be walking around out here at this moment until we get something, going on? Certainly things could have been done, better in many respects. It would have been really good if the administration had gutted all of the preparation stuff and had listened to like what the professionals were doing so that they could have some type of grip on it. But the idea,
Jared in charge, that was kind of a mistake.
And the idea that it was a huge wealth transfer, I totally agree. The way you address that is to claw some of that back in taxes, frankly, in my estimation. Rather than saying like, we're going to figure this out on the fly when you just had 30,000 people die in a couple of weeks in New York City, or, in New York. I find that a bizarre approach that I think just services some of his other stuff. And, I watched this stuff about Ukraine, and I thought like, well, I thought his talk about Ukraine was like, and his son fought over there, I guess. We should be, sort of like stopping this invasion by Russia, but we also should, be very clear as to what our exit strategy is. We shouldn't be talking about regime change in Russia, in my estimation. But then he goes on to Tucker Carlson's that night and starts citing numbers that were made up. That like, we're 4 days late on that, and it suggests to me he doesn't necessarily have a cadre of people around him that, when you elect a president, you're not just electing a president, you're electing the people around him. And I see some of the people around him, some of whom I have appreciation for, but a lot of whom I'm like, I wouldn't let these guys in charge of like, ordering lunch in the office.
Well, I watched the speech and I agree with you. There were many things in it that, of course, I agreed with. His entire, this sort of framework was about the sort of, government and corporate, oligarchy.
Yep.
Totally legitimate critique and one that people need to hear. And I have no argument with it. But of course, he's a very imperfect messenger because of all the things that you just cited. There's a conspiracy theorist theory, aspect of him. I mean, with vaccinations, that's been going on for years. But even with the Ukraine stuff, the fact that he read those numbers on Tucker Carlson, the fact that he went on Tucker Carlson, but let's aside from that he uses that platform, and Tucker is clearly using him in a way that is just really cynical. And allowing himself to be used that way, but that he would use those numbers, which is really something that just shows that he's sort of in that conspiratorial kind of atmosphere, and that he's subject to it. That's very, very dangerous stuff right now. I mean, we just can't have it. Williamson too, to a certain extent. I don't know that it's so much conspiracy theories. I mean, I know her a little bit personally, and not as well as Bobby personally, but. She's very much tied into this world, of, kind of, I don't want to say wellness. What would it be?
Woo-woo word.
Woo-woo. Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah. Good old-fashioned woo-woo. Yeah. But so I mean, that's not a good messenger either.
Right. I care less about the woo-woo kind of hippie stuff. And I would, if I were to vote between RFK and Marianne Williamson, I would 100% vote for Marianne Williamson. But I think it's more just that Marianne, why I don't see her campaign as a help. Well, it's fine. I mean, I'm happy if people support her. Yeah. But for for our purposes, for a strategic leftist challenge to Biden, I want a candidate that has coalitions behind them on the left. Right. Like unions, groups that I respect, a power structure, because I don't give a crap about the personality that much. I care about who is supporting them and backing them. And Marianne Williamson is kind of an individual candidate in her own silo, as opposed to someone connected to groups that I want to have more influence in politics.
Yeah, you want some institutional heft behind it. We should also mention it's reported that Steve Bannon was also, promoting the candidacy. Ugh. And I did definitely feel like this is somebody who I wish was running in the Republican Party. And it seems to me like if his logic, which I'm sure, not, having conversations like this with Bobby Kennedy, but if he was to justify going on Tucker Carlson by reaching these people, run the Republican Party. I mean,
where he would have a constituency, because the anti-vax people, in fact, it was reported that many of the people who were at his speech were anti-vax people who follow him for that purpose. Now, for our purposes on the other side, that would be very useful, because Donald Trump is weak on the vax side, and he is that's the one area where he has a real weakness within his own MAGA coalition. So it would be very useful. But obviously Kennedy's not in it for that reason. I mean, he's sincerely running, I think. I don't think he's there to do anything other than to make his case and try to win.
I think
so. But nonetheless, you're right. I mean, he would have a constituency, I think, in the Republican Party that he's not going to have in the Democratic Party, and not because much of his message wouldn't be useful, but because of this other stuff, it's just going to be drowned out. There's no way, people can't hear him, any of the other stuff, because of that. And it is pretty heinous. I mean, the vaccine stuff, it's anti-science. It's, that is not a direction that I don't think, we need another party in this country going. I mean, that would be horrifying.
Yep.
And I don't think he will have any headway there.
We'll see. I mean, I think he didn't bring up the vaccinations whatsoever in the in fact, he attributed autism to environmental concerns, which I think, there is sort of nobody knows for sure. He discounts the idea that there's better, diagnoses. But to the extent that people feel that autism rates have gone up, they largely think it is a function probably of some type of environmental stuff, but we don't really know. But he didn't mention vaccines. There's a little bit of hinting about it. And so, but nevertheless, it both in terms of a longing that is both personal and, in terms of a political one, and in terms of what happens when there's a vacuum, who can fill it? I feel like there needs to be a progressive, voice in this, so that Joe Biden doesn't think he's, if he wins in 2024, if he makes it and then wins, he doesn't think it's because of, Zentz or whatever, his chief of staff, the corporate guys got me this victory. We need to have some type of institutional heft on the left that is making that seem like that's what's driving it. And do you see anybody out there? I don't see anybody, or people waiting to see when Biden goes in, because you would think that they would announce before Biden's in rather than after. But
I don't think they're going to do it. I think we're in the same position we were in 2012, when a lot of us were making the same sort of arguments, which is look, let's have a primary. It's not a big deal. It's not the worst thing that could happen. So sorry, there goes my cat. Anyway, I don't think that there's going to be one. I mean, Kennedy and Williamson will be about it. And I think there was somebody who ran against Obama, wasn't there? I mean, was it like Kucinich or one of those kinds? I can't remember. But it's going to be that. And it's often true when you have an incumbent, the party is not going to welcome, a primary under those circumstances. They're going to do everything they can to, and probably the big donors too, because they figure that's, that their strongest case is, incumbency is very powerful, and they want to preserve that as much as possible. So I wouldn't get my hopes up. My big question though is, and big question, I mean, we're getting way ahead of the game, but there.
I'm sorry, you cut out, your audio cut out just for a second.
Thinking about, oh, it did? Oh, yeah. I think we have to ask ourselves who is out there for the future. And I'm not sure who that is. So, that's going to be something we have to start thinking about, because, I don't think, I mean, there's Kamala Harris, who will obviously run. But beyond her running, I'm not sure who it is. And that's an interesting question, because it's not going to be Warren or Sanders, right? I mean, they're both too old. So, who's the next step? Because I'm telling you something, the big news, we haven't talked about this, but I wrote a piece that actually got quite a bit of traction about, the backlash that's developing on the left against all this. It's on abortion, it's on guns, it's on democracy. And these young people who are coming out in places like what we saw in Tennessee and what we're seeing all over the country, this is going to be big. I mean, this is, I think it's going to have the same, I think it's potentially has the same kind of big social impact that, the war in Vietnam had in the 1960s. This something is happening, well, I'm quoting, for what it's worth, but, there is something going on there, I think, in the, a movement that is growing here among young people that I see as being really, really powerful. And it's really in its nascent stage.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that for years to come. But I feel quite strongly that the generation that is really going to make the big moves are, in their 20s and in their 30s. And we're going to see a politician.
I think in their teens too. Yeah, in their teens.
I mean, and I think it's going to be supported by, the kids in their teens right now, and to the extent that some of us have appreciation of it or are older, but I think we're going to see the politicians in that age group, 20s and 30s, are really there. We're going to see the most sort of like, that's where some of the more bold leadership is going to come from.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very impressed that the guys down in Tennessee, the two Justins, super impressive guys. I mean, super impressive guys. I see AOC, super impressive. Martin Frost down in Florida, the first Gen Z congressman, super impressive. And, these are not, it's not any kind of, I mean, they're serious people. They're serious. This isn't, and that's the part that I really appreciate. It's not, it's not
just about the rhetoric,
stuff,
right? It's not about the rhetoric. They also understand, like, they have a theory of change. They have a sense of power. They They know the tactical stuff. Right.
Clear set of goals and clear value system that is very easy to understand, and that you see it. I mean, and as an old person, I find I'm very enthusiastic, and I think they will have the support of people like me, older liberals who are, been slogging through this thing for, our whole lives, who are, really looking for people like that, serious, intelligent, committed people who understand, the way the world works. This is, it shouldn't be a difficult kind of, sort of combination to find, but it is. It's difficult in politics, but that's where I'm going to be interested in looking over the next few years. Who among among this new crop? And like I said before, if you look at the Republican side, oh my God, the new generation of Republicans is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
I mean, my God, so this is going to be interesting, and I'm actually feeling a little optimistic, which is not like me.
Heather Parton, Digby, always a pleasure. Went a little long today, but I could do this. I could do this for 2 more hours, but I appreciate your taking the time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Heather.
My pleasure. It was great to talk to you guys.
Yes, always.
All right, folks. Well, I think we're going to head into the fun half now. 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll get that screen fixed here. Wait a second. Also, folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, but you get the fun half, and you get to IM us in the fun half, and you get the free half free of commercials. Also, don't forget Seder Seeds. Our 420 sale is happening until the 23rd as well. Go to cedarseeds.com, use the coupon code 420, and you can put in an extra pack of train wreck seeds, 6 more seeds. Those are 6 free seeds with that coupon code. So check it out. Mine are germinating right now. I got a couple going.
Whoa.
We'll see. I'll give an update soon. But
are these outdoor grow seeds?
Yeah, but you germinate them in indoors right now, this time of year up here.
I know. It's just now as it gets warmer, like I have a tiny little balcony, so maybe I'll
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. What's happening on ESPN?
Well, we
Bruins got destroyed the other night. That was a real problem.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean the Bruins,
the wild game
only
too.
like the greatest
crazy.
regular season team in the history of the NHL in the salary cap era. They're going to be fine. They're a buzzsaw. I'm terrified of them, frankly. But we did do an NHL preview for the playoffs. We spoke about the kind of wild start to the NBA playoffs. Unfortunately, lots of injuries. On Monday, though, I'm very excited. We're going to be doing an NFL mock draft and a big playoff recap. Mock drafts are very fun. NFL draft, very fun. So check it out, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Also check out Left Reckoning, and incidentally, happy birthday to the MR Discord.
Whoa.
I've just been told by Star Fox is the 2nd anniversary of being public. We have now over 8,000 members in the Discord. You can go to majoritydiscord.com. It's a great place to have conversations from all sorts of different topics and folks there. So check it out. All right, folks. See you in the fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back. back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Dinner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. What's this?
Sam.
I know. It bothers me.
No.
But what about it is bothering you? So I know what I need to do.
The top line, this horizontal line.
Okay.
I like that to match.
All right.
That's what I like to do.
I will get it to match, but not be 2 times your size. How about that?
That's good.
That's good.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I don't know. It just sticks in my craw. Let's go to some IMs, shall we? Sam's tight pants. DeSantis is not the Scott Walker of this election. He is more akin to Ted Cruz, considerable name recognition with base voters and conservative credentials, but also a whiny-voiced edgelord who is unlikable both in person with voters as well as none of his colleagues liking him. Barring a complete Trump collapse, his absolute ceiling is 30% in any given state. Hello, MR crew. Have a nice weekend, says Jay Creates. Binder Dad, respectfully requesting a shofar to celebrate my 69th birthday. Nice. Binder Dad, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.